2024 certainly started on a strange note, with ongoing reports of the box office being in trouble due to underperforming films. And thanks to the writers and actors strike from last year, this is a trend we're also probably going to see in 2025, with major releases not being as tight-knit together. So anyway, like with most people's best of list, I didn't see every movie released in 2024. I saw about, I'd say, 50, and these are the 10 that stood out, at least to me.
Number 10. Juror Number 2. It was a tough call between this one and a runner-up that I'll get to in a bit, and perhaps it's recency bias that might have put this one on the list. I've been a fan of Clint Eastwood's work for a majority of his career, and while Juror Number 2 is completely lacking in terms of interesting shot composition and editing, it makes up for in telling a briskly paced story. I served as head juror on a local case in 2024, and credit where credit's due, the ultimate process here felt very similar, which is more uncommon than not. Number 9. Hundreds of Beavers. I have no idea of anything regarding the process or production of this one, but from an initial watch, it comes across as a clear love letter to classic black and white and silent films of the Charlie Chaplin era, maybe even some Three Stooges and Looney Tunes in here, complete with rate stretched and shortened movements, implausible effects, and clear shortcuts taken to complete a sequence. There's purpose here though, and it doesn't feel like a lazy effort, and is easily the hardest I laughed at any movie all year. Number 8. Anora. While there's good performances in here and clever use of music, it's the natural bleeding between acts that really made this one special. Act 1 is very much a been here, done that kind of thing, and an incident within a house happens that begins Act 2, and suddenly it feels like a completely different movie. It took me a bit to think on it after completing the movie to realize what purpose it had, and after dwelling on it, it's a good enough message to justify a revisit someday. Number 7. Sonic the Hedgehog 3. Few things. 1. I'm a huge Sonic the Hedgehog fan. 2. Sonic the Hedgehog 2 was my favorite movie of 2022. 3. I got to go to early screenings for both Sonic 2 and 3, and they were really fun events. Putting all of that aside, these movies have been wild to see how the production team decided to adapt certain elements from all the games and shuffle them around to create a solid general audience type of movie. Not as good as 2, but better than 1, there were certain narrative choices here that I felt the games did much better. Number 6. Kill.
The moon, it comes crashing into Earth, and what do then? It's two brothers and they're gonna. It's called Two Brothers. Two Brothers. It's just called Two Brothers.
Okay, maybe not specifically that, but Kill utilizes the classic claustrophobic action thriller to a much higher degree, with a majority of people having genuine reactions to things that go down. For example, when someone is injured, the fight doesn't necessarily continue. Many reacted horror before retaliating. There's an overblown villain here, and a vague ending that don't make the experience as satisfying as it could have been, but they're minor complaints ultimately. Before moving on to the top 5, here's some honorable mentions. Richard Linklater's Hitman was truthfully a delightful time despite the subject content here. Even though I have a Sonic the Hedgehog movie in my top 10, there were things in this one that just felt almost too unrealistic. Small Things Like These was a very good translation of the book, and even stacks on a bit towards the end to make the ending better, yet omitted a key character point from the novel. Moana 2's songs weren't nearly as good as the first one, and that's it really. Other than that, it was a solid Disney animated movie. Number 5. The Substance. Whether it's the genius use of color, the unique attention to detail regarding camera movements, the insane art direction that leads to shocking prosthetics, or the story that makes no apologies in what it's trying to say, The Substance isn't a movie for everyone, but if you can bear the insanity, you're in for quite the experience. I watched this on Halloween, and now I plan to pop it into the Halloween rotation going forward. Number 4. Argylle. Okay, here we go. I've shied away from checking things like Rotten Tomatoes or whatever until I check out a new film, show, etc. After finishing Argylle last February, I was stunned to see the negative reception it's getting, but given it's Matthew Vaughn and Mark Productions handling this, what were you expecting? I guess it's a preference thing ultimately, as I've loved every other one of his films. Given the ending twist, the book from the movie, and really breaking things down, there's a lot that doesn't add up, sure, but Argylle was easily the most fun I had in the theater in 2024. Number 3. Deadpool and Wolverine. I wasn't jacked for this movie because of the whole Deadpool's joining the MCU hype train that seemed to follow this thing until its release. No, I was curious if it could be a competent third Deadpool movie and make sense of Wolverine's introduction. What actually surprised me the most was Wolverine's inclusion and the effect of Coda it ended up being to 2017's Logan. Sure, there's some lame backstories here and overblown sequences, but Deadpool 3 accomplished a lot more than expected. Number 2. The Wild Robot. If Argyle was the most fun I had at the theater in 2024, The Wild Robot was certainly the most emotional one. It has a rough 15 or so initial minutes, but after it revs up, it's delightful, emotional, brilliantly animated, and profound. It even takes a trope that can be frustrating, where there's a point where the movie should end, and then it decides to do something else instead, yet that something else ends up adding more to the overall story anyway, and in turn gives a better ending. Number 1. Dune Part 2. I saw the David Lynch Dune in a film class I took years ago, and I barely remember it. I'm a huge Denis Villeneuve fan, and saw Dune in 2021 and really dug the filmmaking on display, but really didn't 100% jive with the story quite yet. So, in 2023, I read the book, and while I won't go on record saying it's one of the best I've ever read, it was still excellent and deserves its place within the conversation of top-tier sci-fi books. So, here's 2024's Dune Part 2, which, save for omitting a kind of crucial part involving Paul Atreides and Chani, manages to hit all the legendary parts here. The sandworm sequence alone is worth the view, and it's the overall epic feel by the end that stuck with me at least, making it my favorite film from 2024. If for some reason you're seeing this and have made it this far, this channel is meant to be a journal of sorts, but nonetheless, thanks so much for checking it out. What were your favorite movies from 2024?